What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. Today we got something pretty special, which is this. This is the newest of the new from Porsche. As you all may know, this is a 992 C4S, and this particular example is pretty well optioned. This one is equipped with a factory aero kit, sport chrono, and the best of all is on the inside of this car because this one has a 7-speed manual. Now, for me, I'm just gonna go right off the bat and tell you my honest opinion on the car. I don't love it. I think it's a great piece of technology, and I think that it's a phenomenal car and it's a phenomenal way to progress as far as where this brand is going with all the new technologies and all the new performance options that they have for these types of cars. But if you're gonna really ask me for an honest opinion, I'm not really a big fan of the 992 in general. And here's why. I do think that the performance delivery of this car is absolutely fantastic. It's a very well-balanced car. At the end of the day, it is a Porsche, so it's gonna do everything you want it to do and more, but it's just the ethos of what Porsche was and what the 911 was that makes me look at this and I'm a little bit disappointed. With the water-cooled cars, there was first the 996 and now we are at the 992, but there seems to be a situation that I like to refer to it as the Goldilocks situation. So in the story of Goldilocks, you have this girl that wanders into a house after a long day and she's tired. She looks at 3 beds and she sees all of her options. She gets into the first one, which let's say would be the 996, and it's a little bit too small. Then she goes on to the bigger bed, the biggest bed of them all, which right now is the 992, and it's just too big. There's too much room. It's not comfy enough for her. But then there's the middle one, which is just right, and in my opinion, that is what the 997.1 and .2s were. As far as the water-cooled cars are concerned, this car to me is just, it's not even a future classic or a future collectible just because of how advanced it's become and how numb it is. Now, I'm not saying that it's a bad car, and I'm not saying that it doesn't translate the road to you, into your hands, into your butt when you're driving and it feels bad. No, this car feels amazing when you're driving it. But there's just so much of it that is now up to the car and no longer up to the driver that it just doesn't really give me any sort of emotions anymore. Starting with auto blip. The auto blip feature is something that is cool and it's really nice and a very interesting piece of technology. It's incredibly smart, but I don't like the fact that I have to go out of my way to program it to turn off. If anything, you should make those who really want the auto blip feature go and turn it on in the settings. It just doesn't make sense to me as to why that is a standard thing for the car when you put it into sport. Another thing that I really don't like is the fact that they got rid of the parking brake lever. That's been around since the 991, and honestly, I cannot tell you how much it irks me. And then there's the interior quality. The interior quality of this car is not bad. It's just the fact that the whole car is put together and it feels very Panamera-like. Let me explain. When you go to lower the windows and you go to touch all your toggles, the haptic feedback is enjoyable and it does let you know that you're doing something, but the window switches themselves feel kind of cheap. It's not a plastic switch that's on its own lever or anything like that. It's now connected to the molded piece of plastic that's there, and if there's any way to compare it to what it feels like, it's like when BlackBerry launched their Torch or their first touchscreen phones. Doesn't really feel like a touchscreen, but it's also sensitive enough to be one, but it's just weird and it doesn't feel comfortable. It feels like it's cracking all the time, and quite frankly, I don't know how that's gonna hold up in the next 3, 4, 5 years of being outdoors or being driven in hot climates because those plastics don't feel like they're very, very high quality either. The cluster is gorgeous. I really do like the main cluster, but again, it's all screens now, and I get that that is the part of advancing the car and that's the future of technology, but it's just no longer a purist's car. It really isn't. Now, does the car sound nice? Absolutely. On this one, it's optioned with the Porsche Sport exhaust, so I have the toggle switch where I can make the exhaust louder or quieter, so that's always enjoyable, and it does give you a lot of noise, and it pumps itself into the ambient noise inside the cabin, which is kind of cool, but it just feels like it's all a placebo. It feels like a sugar pill that they're giving you to make you feel like you're in one of their cars from before. These sorts of nannies and sugar pills didn't exist back then. This placebo effect that they've started to put into all of these cars, whether it's Porsche, BMW, Mercedes, none of that existed 2 generations ago, and no one really asked for it either. I understand that it's part of technology and it's part of the advancements of what the future holds and how they can make the ambience of the car better, but at the end of the day, it's just all technology. It's not raw. Now, I know I've been going on quite a bit on why I don't like the car. I do have a lot of features that I like about it. I mean, the driving position is fantastic. Porsche always makes sure that the ergonomics in the cabin makes sense so that your driving sensation is great. The grip is incredible. The size of this car is not that much bigger than the 991, but in comparison to what older 911s were like, it is absolutely bloated and huge, and it still masks itself incredibly well. This 3-liter twin turbo is extremely powerful. I really don't feel like I need anything else for what a C4S would be. The car performs exceptionally well. It is not a slow car at all, even though the displacement is now back to what earlier 911s were like, and the size is massive. The car is incredibly quick. Right, so here we are. We are in the 992 aerokit. Inside the cabin, like I said, it's a little bit cold. It's a little, I guess, uninviting, and it doesn't have the sense of spirit and emotion that a sports car wishes to evoke. At least that's the way I think it should be. Obviously, the car's chassis is tuned extremely well. The car's balance is phenomenal. At the end of the day, we're talking about a 911. If there's one thing that Porsche does well, it's cars with rear engines, calling them 911s, and then putting them out to the masses to go ahead and make them feel like race car drivers right out of the box. It is a huge amount of technology that has been packed into a pretty compact chassis when you're thinking about the amount of technology behind it. The rear steering, the twin turbo 6, 7-speed gearbox, stuff like this would have never been even thought of back in the 90s or even early 2000s. No one would have even thought about the possibility of putting all this stuff together, but here we are. And it shows what Porsche can do, and that is over-engineer anything, really. I mean, this car is really good at pretty much anything you throw it into. The rear steering, the turbocharged 3-liter, the combination of a phenomenal gearbox, and then all of the sounds from the outside of the car being channeled back into the cabin, it allows for a phenomenal cacophony of just excitement. But, you know, it is a little bit unfortunate to know that a lot of it is just theatrics. I don't know, it just doesn't feel to me like a sports car. It is just a very keen and agile and nimble GT car, and that's what this car is. Even though I have had a lot of negative things to say, it does get me excited. What does it get me excited for? It goes to show, and it gets me excited to think of what is the GT3 really going to be like. That is going to be an animal. But it does get me excited about the GT3, and it gets me excited also about the GTS line. That entire class and that entire category of the 911 is something that's still relatively fresh, relatively new. It got introduced to the 997, but it does a fantastic job at being a more track-oriented and more driver-oriented Carrera. The 911S, you know, this is a Carrera 4S, is a great car, but this one feels further away from a 911 than the others really do. But the GTS might be so aggressive that it'll make everybody pretty much forget about the S. So let's go ahead and put it into Sport Plus, which now we've activated the loud exhaust. We went ahead and activated PDCC, which is pretty much what PASM was back in the day. And now we have the dreaded auto blip feature, which it does a much better job at rev matching than I ever will in my life. But let me make those mistakes, damn it. I want to learn, and I'm not going to progress if I just have the car doing it for me. Of course, if you take it to the track, it is convenient. You might get your feet tired and might get a little bit tangled up trying to rev match and stuff like that, and you don't want to blow a transmission, which is good, right? But it's not the same. I mean, you might as well just get a PDK because it's very much so PDK-like when you hear the automatic blip. With the rear steering, the car has become incredibly agile, I will say that. I mean, here we have a corner coming up. You get a great amount of noise. There's the auto blip, but whatever. And this car is just planted. 964s, 996s, 997s, 993s, they all have a sense of, they're not fast, but they have a sense of, you know, begging for more. Does this car beg for more? Not really. I don't feel it. I don't feel that. I feel like I have to purposely go out of my way to look for trouble to then be brought into it. And no one wants trouble, but I don't know. This is one of those cases where I want that peer pressure. I don't want to look for it. It is tremendously fast, I'll tell you that. I don't know. I feel like I'm already doing way too much to try and get it to evoke these sorts of sensations. I want to drive and always feel like I'm ready to go. This car is always ready to go, but because of the technology and because you have to tell it to go. So in conclusion, is it a good car? Yes. Is it a good sports car? I don't feel like it is a sports car anymore. This car is no longer about the sport of racing and the sport of driving it enthusiastically. It's become a piece of technology and it's become something that is really, really cool and something that is incredibly agile, but it is not that much more other than a very keen grand tourer. Once you bump up to the GTS and the GT3 that I am very much so looking forward to, that's when you start getting into more aggressive territories, because at the end of the day, this car is fast. So something more aggressive than this and something quicker than this will be a riot, I can tell you that much. But it just didn't live up to the hype that I wished the next generation of 911 would have lived up to. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, drive safe, stay safe, and cheers. Oh, no, no! What is it with pigeons and birds landing in front of me, bro?